Last time we have positioned our clouds, and now we need to position our player. So here I'm going to create void position the player function. And here first we need to get a reference to all of the clouds that are in the game. So first I'm going to say game object, and this is going to be a game object array. This is going to be our dark clouds, and it's equal to game object find game objects. So not game object, not a singular, but plural, game objects with tag. And here we need to pass the tag deadly because we know that our dark clouds have a tag of deadly. And also, again, using a game object array, which is going to be our clouds in game, is equal to game object dot find game objects with tag cloud. Now, the first thing that we need to do is if I go back here and if I rerun the game, so we randomize the game, so let me just rerun it nicely like this. There is a slight chance that the first cloud that's going to be positioned here is a dark cloud. Because if I take the cloud spawner, notice here the arrangement of our elements. So at element 0 we have cloud 1, 2, 3, then dark cloud, then cloud 1, 2, 3, and then dark cloud again. Because we are using our shuffle function, which we explained how it works, notice now when I rerun the game how our clouds are rearranged. And we see the example here. So the element 0 is our dark cloud. And we cannot position our player above the dark cloud or he will die immediately. Now, one other thing, there is also a slight chance that the second cloud is also going to be a dark cloud. So we are going to have two dark clouds right here in the game. And then we are not able to position our player on either of those two because he will die immediately. For that, what we need to do is we need to say here for int I is equal to 0, as long as I is less than our dark cloud, so dark clouds dot length, we are going to increment I. And we are going to compare our dark cloud, so we are going to say if our dark clouds and the element that's at I index dot transform dot position dot Y is equal to 0. So if his Y position is equal to 0, meaning we have a dark cloud positioned first. Then what we need to do is we need to change his position. But before that, we need to say here vector3 temp, or I'm simply going to name it t, is equal to, and I'm going to get dark cloud transform that position. Because we need to store his position, and for the new position, so I'm going to say the new position of our dark cloud is equal to new vector3, and I'm going to use the clouds in game and the element that's at first index. So I'm going to say clouds in game and the element that's at 0 index dot transform dot position dot x, comma, again using the same element, so or the same game object, but this time I'm going to use his y position dot y, and lastly dot z for the position. This is going to reposition the dark cloud to the position of this cloud, and that way we are not going to have our dark cloud as the first game object in the scene. And now I'm simply going to use our dark clouds in game, and this element transform position is equal to t, or the element or the position where initially our dark cloud was. So this is what we are doing here, simply repositioning the dark cloud. So I can explain it like this. So if I run the game and let's say, so let me just rerun it again until we have the dark cloud. So let me try one more time. Okay, we have here the dark cloud. It's at the y0 position. And this right here is going to be equal to true. So this here is going to be equal to true, and we need to reposition him. Let's say that this cloud right here is the cloud that's at 0 element or 0 index. What we are going to do with this code right here is that we are simply going to take this dark cloud, position it here, and we are going to take this cloud and position it here. This is essentially what we are doing. So nothing hard or complicated. This is what we are doing, storing the position of the dark cloud, setting the new position of that dark cloud to be, well, the position of the element for our clouds that's at the 0th index, and then repositioning that same game object but using dark cloud's position. This is simply going to swap their positions. Now we need to actually position our player. For that, I'm going to create here a vector3 temp, which is going to be equal to our clouds. So clouds in game, and the element that's at 0 index that transform that position. Because now what we need to do is we need to create a for loop. So for int I is equal to 0, as long as I is less than our clouds in game.length, we are going to increment I. And excuse me, here is going to be for int I is equal to 0. And let me just see if we have, well, we did not do this outside of our loop, so we need to do it outside of this first for loop. So outside of this loop, and we need to do it here. So for int I is equal to 1, y is equal to 1, well, because we have already here our element that's at 0 index. We are simply going to compare their y position. So we are going to say if our temp.y is less than our clouds in game and the element that's at I, transform that position.y. So if this y-axis is less than this y-axis, then our temp is equal to this position, because we want to position our player above the first cloud. Well, the first cloud at the y position. That's why we are comparing their positions, because if that position is less than this position, we want to reassign it, because that means if I rerun the game, we want to position our player here. So we want to position him on this cloud. And we are comparing the y positions. If the y position that's here is less than the other position, so let's say, for example, we have our y at here. So this temporary variable, this one right here, its y position is here. And we are comparing that with the position of our other clouds. Well, if this variable here and its y position is less than this position right here, then we are going to switch their positions. Or we are simply going to reassign here. We are simply going to reassign this position to this position. And that way we are going to get, well, our first cloud position. And after that, what we are simply going to say is we are going to say our player that transform that position is equal to our temp. There is one more thing that we are going to do, but I'm going to demonstrate it now. So if I run the game now, but before that, what we need to do is we need to go here and we need to get the reference to our player. So here we need to say our player is equal to game object find player in the scene. So find the game object that has the name player. And we have our player, which, well, has the name player. And also here in the start function, we need to say void start. We need to position the player. So we need to say position the player in order for this to work. So call these functions right here. Now, if I run the game, and I'm going to pause it immediately, when I run it, we are going to see the player being positioned right here for the cloud. We don't want that. What we want is we need to say here, before we assign the player's position, we need to say temp.y plus equals, let's say, 0.8. So plus equals 0.8 to that position already. So the initial position that we have here, we are going to add a little bit more to the y position. And now if I rerun the game, and now we are going to see the player positioned exactly above this first cloud. So we see the player being positioned, and I can rerun it again. So if I rerun it, again, the player is positioned on the first cloud. Again, we see the player positioned on the first cloud. And this is how we are going to position the player on the first cloud.